To another episode of the Field of 68 Best Bets show presented by BetRivers. As you can tell, it's a two-man weave today. Our buddy Jim Root is in the air on an aeroplane, Matthew. So just you and me. We're excited though, aren't we? I'm excited to talk hoops. Friday, small slate, whatever. We're going to talk it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. We're coming on the heels of the Sleepers Media going two-man, doing a phenomenal job. I think the bar has been raised. A little worried if we don't live up to the standards, we might be counseled out. But hey, it's Bucket Hat Fridays or Safari Hat Fridays. Not sure how you classify
everyone.
To my guy, it's sort of just an extreme sun prevention type of lid. But yeah, Kyle, let's two-step this sucker.
Curious how you came to own that hat, but we don't need to go into story time. It's okay.
No, let's do it. Purchased in Hawaii a week ago. Done. End of story.
Oh, done. Easy. Thank you. Actually, yeah, I do remember that hat in your picture. That's wonderful. Matt, takeaways from yesterday real quick before we get into the slate today.
Sure. Drake, sans Roman Penn equals broken ball club.
Yes.
I don't think it's hot breaking newswire type stuff. Most people would expect that, but it's funny. We saw the Penn injury last year take a slight ding into Drake's juggernaut status, but then Mr. Yusufu stepped up and really carried the torch. They don't have that type of guy this season, and it's really brought them down. Now, I know they did play well against Clemson in the game before, so I don't want to overreact too much to that.
Kinda.
But yeah, I mean, they did go to overtime. Obviously, they lost an OT, but I mean, it's not like they've been completely overvalued by the markets. I guess they have been, except for that one game. We'll see how that pans out. I also want to mention just a reiteration of IUPUI's futility this season.
They're bad.
I know some of our friends are talking about auto betting IUPUI unders. Sounds like a pretty good strategy. I think the ROI on that
hasn't lost yet.
Infinity. I think it's undefeated, correct? You can't even define that. Math doesn't allow you to calculate the ROI on that. So
yes.
Two things worth noting. IUPUI bad basketball team, good for unders. Drake concerning going forward.
Yes. And you know what? Let's talk about that IUPUI game really quick. Chicago State, they got their first road win since 2019, fellas. Well, I guess Matthew. Good for them. Good for the Cougars. That program, it's on the rise. You can feel the momentum coming.
You can just here in Chicago, Kai, like when you walk around, there's just like a buzz in the air. It's hard to put your finger on it. Yeah, it's something you can't quite explain it, but it's there. It's real. Real juice.
Right. Let's get into the slate here. We do have a tip coming up pretty soon. Can we be agile? And talk it now, Matthew? I know the rundown, and I apologize to the producers. All right, we're going to talk Liberty, East Carolina really quick, and we'll skip it later on the rundown because it does tip in 27 minutes.
Yep.
As our friend Harry R in the chat pointed out. Matt, East Carolina's not bad, man.
Nope.
8-2 overall, 6-4 against the spread, but they've only played 3 top 200 teams. They hung with Oklahoma. And the question on my mind, as always, when anybody plays Liberty, can the other team shoot? Does ECU hang around, or does Liberty kick their little butts?
ECU's made shots this year. I know we're looking at 10-ish games, and sometimes this is the point where you see teams get overinflated or they're just undervalued based on extreme shooting splits in both directions. I tend to think this roster actually has some shooting. I was holding East Carolina in a wait-and-see holding pattern mode until I saw my boy Winston Tabbs debut.
Is he ever going to play?
I don't know what this. He's basically. I put him on the back burner. I don't know what his status is, but they have talent. I mean, look at this roster. I mean, these guys that have been there before. Tristan Newton has really blossomed into a star. You got J.J. Miles, Brandon Suggs, and then Tremont Robinson White. I mean, there is talent here, right? I think we looked at this roster last season. There's a lot of the same guys back, and it's an athletic squad. And we've seen athleticism bother Liberty when weaponized appropriately. The question is, how will Joe Dooley play that to his advantage? I think he should probably exert some pressure. And they'll probably have to make some shots. But I do lean ECU here.
Yeah, Newton, Miles, Jackson, and Robinson White all shooting over 37% from deep. That's good against the pack line. Liberty, they're a jump shooting team as well, Matthew. Top 10 3-point attempt rate per synergy. East Carolina is in the 83rd percentile at guarding spot ups. So maybe East Carolina's defense has a little bit of an advantage here. Yeah. Liberty's obviously better at bottling up teams that slash and score in the paint. That's not really East Carolina's game. So I actually lean towards the Pirates as well. 3 is the current number. Nothing strong there. All right.
Quick injury notes there. East Carolina is getting 2 fringe starters back today.
Frink.
Frink is the notable one, the former South Carolina transfer. Those you may know his name. The bigger question mark is Keegan McDowell, though, for Liberty. Pretty key forward there, versatile. inside out stretch guy. They really haven't rebounded well this year, but he's a guy that's going to matter. So we'll see if he goes.
Yeah. All right, fellas, back up to the top of the outline. Let's start with St. Bonaventure versus Virginia Tech. Spreads 2.5. But Matt, the question is Kyle Lofton. If you're going to back the Bonnies, which I think you should, if he's in the lineup, you need to make sure he's there. They're the better team right now, but without him, it's a no bet for me.
Man, better team. Yeah, I guess the way Vodtek's playing, it's tough to argue against that. The Buffalo game comes to mind for me because that was the first time we saw them without Lofton, and you're trying to handicap and put a number on how much he's worth. I was tending to think that Mark Schmidt would move the pieces properly and get everything to work, but Lofton's such a key part of what they do. They don't have any bench pretty much. And I think it came back to bite them. We saw last game against Connecticut. Now, the Huskies are a different class in terms of size and athletes up front. But I think you have to look at that and respect how important Lofton is. So if he comes back today, what kind of Lofton are you getting? Are you getting gimpy Lofton? Or are you getting the passive, kind of hesitant jump shooter that we saw at times last year? If anything, that actually be a net negative. A lot of these injury plays, people look at the guys comes back after the first game. They don't always have their best stuff. They've sort of trying to find their mojo. But Kai Vodtek, man, what's the deal with them?
I got a little stat for you, but Lofton's a gamer, man. He's one of those guys that he's not going to be gimpy. He hurt his ankle 2 weeks ago. I think he plays today. So I'm leaning towards the Bonnies here. Yeah, Tech, man. They got down 16 in the second half. Only had one lead, like 2-0 against Dayton. That's pretty concerning. Matt, Storm Murphy. Here's the stat. It's by far his lowest O rating of his career. He's turning it over
so tough to see.
Against tier A and B competition. 5-game sample size. 17% from three, 30% turnover rate, and a 58.7 O rating. Storm Murphy, a guy we thought was fringe top 100 player this year.
Hey, we saw him go toe-to-toe with Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. It's the same guy. 2 years older. Obviously, he wasn't dominant in that game, but I thought he held his own. And, man, he just hasn't lived up to it. And they lack size and physicality up front. The smarts and deception of Mike Young's offense and the shooting and the way they play can only carry them so far. At some point, you got to be able to check people up front.
Last key, Shun. Need to stay out of foul trouble against Aluma.
Yes.
If he does, if Lofton plays, I think Bonnie's a pretty strong play. Just my opinion.
I agree. I think both these first two games on the outline. I'm sorry. Let's add Liberty to that. Pretty sharp prices in the markets right now. So not a ton of line value.
They tend to be around our showtime, right, Matt?
Yeah,
give the odds makers some credit there.
Damn early markets.
All right, let's go to Villanova visiting Creighton. Big East play kicks off tonight. Nova, obviously, uncharacteristically Nova against Baylor. Credit the Bears defense, but man, I saw 100 missed layups. I saw open looks that were missed by Villanova. 0.6 points per possession, 6 for 27 from 2, 6 for 27 from 3. That's not good. Matt, is Creighton Baylor? Does Creighton have Baylor's defense?
No, they don't.
Oh,
okay. Let's just get that out of the way up front. The thing with Creighton here is it's a young team, as we've said multiple times on this program.
Very.
And it's a team that I think is going to have high highs and low lows. So you would think in the opening conference game here at home, it'd be a hype spot, but I think this is a deflated home spot with the exam week and a Villanova team that's going to be hyper motivated. It feels like a bunch of adults in the room versus a bunch of young fawns still growing up. Mm-hmm. And I know they have that home, the friendly confines of Central League Arena that's going to be behind them, but I don't think it carries the same juice tonight. And I just don't see Nova really sleepwalking from this one. I think this is the first time they're going on the road and they're going to play a team that they can really put in the torture chamber. As good as Creighton's been, as big as they are up front, I think Nova's a mismatch problem for them. I like Nova. I think they win by double digits here.
I don't believe it's exam week. I think that was the 6th to the 11th per Google.
Did you do some research? Wow.
If that helps.
We do need some official exam week beat reporters in the chat mob. So mobsters, please hop on for us. Thank you.
I don't know how Creighton works, but I assume school is currently not in session. So it could be a lighter crowd, but in Omaha, I think Creighton basketball games are pretty big, man. I think that's what you do.
Oh, yeah, they're huge. Absolutely.
No offense to Omaha. If you're Omaha, is a lovely city. Villanova is a different tier than Creighton. I really can't see the Blue Jays hanging around in this one, stacking up to them. Strength is a big one for me. Creighton's probably bigger size-wise, but strength's not even close. Villanova's much stronger.
Positional size, too.
Experience is huge. Yeah. I'm leaning towards Villanova as well. Next game, neutral site game, St. Mary's, San Diego State. Matt, I think our gut is screaming St. Mary's. San Diego State's very good, but without Lamont Butler, their offense has been limited. 1 point per possession against Fullerton, 0.85 against Michigan. Very small sample size, but just seems like they're not quite as good offensively without one of their best guards.
Agree. We've seen a Trey Pulliam. He's been like a game manager type of point there for multiple years. They brought in Matt Bradley, our boy, fatty Matt Bradley.
He's great.
Smooth shooting lefty, can kind of score inside and out there. He hasn't been hyper efficient this season, and Pulliam's limited as, he is what he is. And so without Butler, they lack that sort of offensive dynamism. And yeah, as you mentioned, the stats don't lie. So I think that matters here. And the Gales we love. I'm just annoyed the odds makers opened this line at 2.5. It's like they knew we were dying to take the Gales and they wanted to hedge themselves against the potential money bags of steam that we were going to eventually drop on the Gales here.
Yeah.
Got to stay away though at 3. I think it's too expensive to lay.
It's a bit expensive. KenPom does have it -2 in favor of St. Mary's. 2 top 10 defenses here. Defensive game, maybe. Total is extremely low, 118.5 right now. I think it might go over, probably lean towards that way. Honestly, I think St. Mary's can execute so well. I just like how cohesive St. Mary's is as a team. They look awesome right now. San Diego State, maybe not quite as finished product right now without Butler in the lineup.
Yep.
But as you said, -3 is a bit too much for me. So I will happily stay away.
Yeah, it's a low total, man. Sub 120. It's
always very low.
But I think that's apt. It's sharp.
All right, next one. Another neutral site game. Richmond, NC State. Richmond's favored by 2. And Matt, my knee-jerk reaction was Richmond immediately.
Yes.
But
yep.
I think that was more so a spot thing with NC State coming off that overtime game with Purdue. It's a home run effort. I mean, they nearly probably should have beaten the Boilermakers. Yep. Richmond's offense is obviously very tough to prepare for. Chris Mooney's Princeton attack is wonderful. Cutting, very experienced group. But NC State has a lot of athletes. They have a ton of length. If there's anything that can stop a Princeton-style offense that cuts a lot, it's athleticism, it's length. And Terquavian Smith in the backcourt's been awesome for them, in addition to Hayes and Seaborn and even Helms. Like, NC State's been good despite Manny Bates being out of the lineup.
Yeah, I think that you talk about the multiple athletes and drivers and slashers that NC State has in the wing. I think that actually helps them more on the offensive end. This feels like a shootout to me. I'm looking at the total right now, and it is control fine.
It is 142.
Yeah, it's been bet up from 139 to 142. So some people are stiffing out what I'm looking at here. I still think it could go as high as 150. I like the over a lot. Richmond does not do well in terms of staying in front of drivers. They're not the most laterally quick team. I think NC State is ripe to beat them off the bounce. Spread them out, pick and roll.
I agree.
They can carve them up. But also Richmond's tough to defend. And I think this Richmond team is going to come in motivated. Kai, they have a lot of good wins, but no great wins. I don't know if an at-large berth is in their future. It seems like unlikely at this point because they love to blow leads. Another great live betting opportunity. Richmond gets up, Richmond gets down, come in on the other side. That's a little anecdote there.
Duona, is that how I pronounce his name for NC State? The center
the
kind of stepped in
transfer?
for Bates for NC State. I believe so. Doesn't matter. I think he's going to have issues on Golden. And I'm not talking about in the paint. I'm talking about when Golden keys the Princeton attack from the top of the key. That's a tough matchup there. I do think Helms is a great matchup for Burton, though. Man, I'm on the fence. Again, my knee jerk was Richmond. Thinking about it more, it's kind of a stay away from me. I think it's probably a fair price at 2.
Ebenezer, Kai, pardon me. Now I'm thinking of the other
Ebenezer.
Delona. He transferred to a small mid-major, which is I'm blanking on at this point.
There's so many Delonas out there, man.
There are so many.
Yeah.
Dime a dozen. Johnson, Smith, Delomas is tough to peg them.
I don't think we have any chat mob currently. Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
I'm glancing
seeing stuff that's on our resume or on our rundown already or hasn't come up yet. So I press on.
Real quickly though, a couple of questions on prior games, which you may not have addressed. Did you have a take on the Liberty total, ECU total?
No, not really.
I didn't.
I tend to think I lean over like with.
I kind of lean over too. I think there's some shot making in that game.
Yeah,
that was the only outright direct question. That you're right, won't already be addressed on the outline. So forge ahead.
All right, let's continue. Furman, Mississippi State. Again, we're skipping ECU Liberty because we already talked about them today. Furman, Matt, as we know, was tied at half with UNC, but they got smoked in the second. They couldn't handle the Tar Heels inside. UNC grabbed 36% of their misses, shot almost 60% inside the arc.
Yeah.
Not super surprising. Furman's kind of been a sieve inside. And boy, watching that game, I mean, Brady Manick looked like Shaq. If you can make Brady Manick look like Shaq, you're in trouble. And then Furman shot 30% from 3. We said on our show, I believe a few days ago before that game, it was going to come down to shooting for Furman. They didn't get the job done. Mississippi State, a similarly aggressive team on the boards, even without Tolu Smith. Are you scared of Furman's ability to keep them off the glass?
Yes.
Keep them from scoring in the paint?
Terrified. In the first half, everyone was lights out against UNC, and that's partly why they were up 1.5. And then nothing fell second half. I almost think if they would have balanced out that shot making throughout the game, it would have stayed closer and allowed that to play more competitively. But once UNC put that early run on with their interior dominant second half, it was pretty much over. Mississippi State doesn't have the same horses up front as UNC, but they definitely have size and length, even without Tolu Smith. I worry we could see a repeat episode of that. And I still continue to say cautiously, Mississippi State's kind of good, folks.
I think they're good.
It's not a sexy team. It's a team I think people want to say is trash. I think we've had a few people put the Mississippi State trash logo in our chat the last few weeks. Now it's a decent team, and Iverson Molinar is awesome. And they should beat Colorado State, and they probably do if Molinar doesn't go like 2 of 14 or whatever he did. One note personnel-wise, Cam Matthews missed last game for Mississippi State. He's an underrated sort of glue guy defender. I think he matters with the intangible stuff. But I know that's contradicting my players don't matter take, so I probably should just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, it's going to come down to shooting again for the Paladins. They can absolutely get hot, but Mississippi State's got a lot of length in the perimeter. They're coming off a cold night. I don't know. I'd rather just stay away in this game. I think Jim leans Furman.
He does. I said worth noting what our colleague Jim, who's not with us today, Jim does Furman. Like Furman. The men
if you like Jim, maybe put
and
a
like Fur, then
like Fur and
put
men
two together.
Put it all on for Furman.
Yeah, Furman. Done.
All right. Charlotte at Wake Forest. This spread is 9.5, courtesy of BetRivers, down slightly from the opener.
Too high.
Around 10. Yeah, Jake LaRavia, Matt, one of Wake Forest's best players. He's averaging 14, 6, and 3 and over 2 steals a game. The guy is one of the best O ratings in the country from Indiana State. And without him, we saw against VMI, they were down 17 in that game. They obviously came back and won, but he's huge to their offense. But Charlotte likes to melt down. They like to hang around in the beginning. They like to melt. We've seen it a few times this year already. Matt, what do you think about Charlotte Wake?
I love Charlotte. It's my best bet. Boom. Spoiler.
Whoa.
Unveil. There it
9.5.
is. 9.5 at BetRivers. Anything 9 and above, I would officially endorse as a play. You're right, Kai. I mean, Wake Forest has been, for the most part, lights out all season. The Northwestern game, they sort of had a few leads, then blew them, then built leads, and then blew it again. But LaRavia was really the driving force in that game. He was the go-to guy that Northwestern didn't really have an answer for. I think he's actually the mismatch problem here for Charlotte potentially. As awesome as Alondas Williams has been, I mean, Jim brought this up this morning. I don't think I even realized how good of a year he's having. Like, I think he's having a good year, but it's like top end ACC all-conference caliber, potentially all-American if Wake continues to go on this surge. It's just a tough matchup for Wake for me, the way I see it. Anecdotally, the pack line, I think, keeps Wake out of the lane. But Kai, you have good data that sort of debunks my perception. It has me a little bit worried.
I do. It shocked me. Ron Sanchez, a Tony Bennett disciple, packs it in, as does his mentor.
Parks the bus.
But Charlotte's 335th in field goal attempt percentage allowed near the rim. That's very, very bad. That's among the worst in the country. Basically, teams get a lot of shots at the rim against them, which is counterintuitive, and they make 61.3% of them. That's one of the worst in the country as well. That's worrisome. Williams gets to the rack, Matt. Walton's big. Muse just kind of hangs out in the perimeter, but he's also pretty big for Wake. It's just a funny defensive stat that Charlotte is it's very counterintuitive to me.
It may be like a changing. I mean, there might be some stylistic changes that we're not really privy to, but yeah, you're right. Because the data does sort of debunk my stylistic edge there, but it's not a stylistic play. The number's too big. Charlotte's a good team. It's too big for a neutral site game. It's in their backyard. It's like 30 minutes or 20 minutes away from campus.
I don't think Wake's too far away from.
No, it's
Charlotte.
all close. But I mean, like, I think the Sanchez was quoted like, "Oh, I love this MTE. It's in our backyard. It's like it's sort of a reinvigorating energy type of thing." All that nonsense, qualitative BS, I'm going to buy into. So sorry.
A funny defensive stat, real quick on this: Charlotte's dead last in the country in free throw percentage defense. So teams have shot 81.6% from the line against them. Wake is 8th in the in the country in the same stat in free throw percentage, 81.6% on offense. Worrisome, I guess, but that's obviously not in Charlotte's control. How good their opponents shoot free throws. Just a funny stat, Matt, that came up while perusing
Were you
the
a
various analytic sites.
were you a trash talker when guys are shooting there at the stripe and you're sitting there at the like the elbow, the third hash?
In my chippier years post college,
you suck, miss it, like that kind of stuff. It's always good.
If we were talking trash all game, I'd throw them a little bit of a rebound coming off, something like that.
So we're saying Charlotte should do more of that in today's
I think Charlotte should talk more trash.
Yep.
That's exactly right. Okay, last game in the rundown. I know we have another question in the chat about a game we haven't covered yet. We will hit that in the next part of the chat mob round. San Jose State at Portland.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's weird. This movement of this line, Matt. It's -2 right now. Portland at BetRivers. There are some 1.5s out there. Portland was hammered overnight. Got up to like 3, I believe. Then the market came back on San Jose State, as the market always seems to do this season.
Yes.
The market loves Tim Miles. We love Tim Miles. Here's what I have to say about San Jose State, Matt. On the road, they're 0-4 straight up. They're 2-2 against the spread. At home, San Jose State is 5-0 and 5-0 against the spread. It's a much worse road team. I'm hoping they're cold. They're the 13th best three-point shooting team in the country. They're another team that relies on jump shooting. So I'm hoping Portland get it done, Matt, because I say that Portland is my best bet at -2.
What?
Your thoughts?
The Pilots? Love it. Here's why
Yes.
I love it, Kai. In addition to you endorsing it on the onset there, just as an initial advantage of confidence, it's an interesting spot where they played Monday and Wednesday. So it's their third game in 5 days for Portland, but they're coming from Oregon, so not too far away. They just got outclassed by the Ducks. I know the Ducks have been bad this year, but when a team that's sort of in a desperation type of mode, that's the more athletic, more talented team, we see these blowouts happen.
Not worried about that one.
I don't either. Doesn't make me think any less of Portland. They come back and I think they catch a San Jose State team, which you're right, Kai. I feel like they've been fueled by that that home comfort, and they've had some good road efforts as well. But I think they're just a different team at home. They've shot the lights out. I just think this is a Portland team that's a little bit better than San Jose State. Neither is super talented, but there's a slight edge, and Tim Miles' coaching prowess is negated by Mr. Chancey Leans, who's a phenomenal X and O guru himself. I'm with you. I like Pilots here at home.
Great. Fantastic. Best bet.
Thank you.
All right. Chat mob round 2. The only question I've seen, Matt, is South Alabama and Tarleton State.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. What do you got?
I'll hit the side first. Our beloved Undertaker brother and Jimmy Roots has I kind of just spoiled what his play is on the total, but we'll talk side first and then we'll get to the total and why that there actually might be some parallels between both.
All right, let's get there. I think it's down to +1 at BetRivers, Matt.
+1. Okay.
Tarleton State's +1.
So these two teams just played on Tuesday, as I believe we mentioned on that show. Game was it was neck and neck throughout. South Alabama put a late run into the Texans, and our beloved Texans with a little backdoor bucket to get the push. If you had +7s, if you had +6.5 or below, I apologize. This is a tough beat for you. But now you're coming back to Tarleton. So both teams making the same trip back to Central Texas. I think it's just like a half hour outside of Fort Worth. And so I guess the home component is an interesting handicap here, right? Like I don't think you can give a full home if both teams are literally doing the exact same travel. Obviously, the comfort and familiarity with your own home gym matters. But I just think Tarleton's the more undervalued team. They're more underpriced right now in the market. And I know they struggled as a home dog against Charleston Southern, a large home favorites, got beat outright by Charleston Southern. But this is their first D1 win opportunity, and they are as good as South Alabama, in my opinion, and I think they win.
Interesting. I don't think they're as good as South Alabama, but I don't mind the spot here for Tarleton. Do you think they shared a bus, by the way? Maybe they did.
Maybe they're throwing food out the window as they're going down the interstate there or something. Yeah, I don't know.
There are 2 more questions, but we might as well spoil it already because you already did. Yep. Jim's best bet today, guys, is South Alabama, Tarleton State under. And the current price is 126.5 at BetRivers. So here's what I got to say about this. And Jim and I have discussed this offline as well. 2 days ago, when these teams played, the total closed at 123.5. That obviously went over. The opener, the opener today was 127.
131.
So nothing really changed besides, okay, these teams played one game together and odds makers moved the total up 3.5 points. To me, that says value is heavily on the under there. I think Tarleton State handles the tempo much better at home in their home environment. I think it's a great bet. I commend Jim and I hope he hits for his best bets.
I agree. There's 71 possessions in that game, which actually was faster than was pretty high for those two teams. However, a lot of it was late game back and forth frenetic nonsense. So if you just like isolate the first 30 minutes, it was a crawl, as every Tarleton State game is. They just bring you right down in the muck and they drag you through it. And I think that's where South Alabama struggles to score potentially too. So I think there's some correlation between Jim's under and my Tarleton State. So if you have the opportunity to bet a little parlay there, go for it. But most books aren't really allowing you to do that right now,
right?
Unfortunately.
Okay, we got two more questions here. Number one, North Dakota State and Pacific. This spread's come down.
Yes, it has.
I believe it is actually went back up a little bit. It is -2 in favor of Pacific at BetRivers. Pacific, Matt, is a team that we have been fading.
Yes.
North Dakota State, we've been on more than average. Sam Grissel back in the lineup, though.
Yeah.
Sam Grissel back in the lineup is huge.
Yep.
25 points against Indiana State. He was excellent. He was supposed to be on a minute restriction, and Richmond was like, nah, you just need to play. You're the only guy that can do anything. Any lean in this game?
Yeah, I lean Nodak State because of his emergence. I think we undervalued how much he means to this team. They don't really have a point guard. He's kind of their quasi point guard, and he just makes stuff happen, makes everyone jobs easier, makes their lives easier. They have other weapons, though. The Bison are better than how they played. I know Griesel's been out, and that's hurt them, but like they got some dude. Rocky Cruiser can play. I mean, they got other guys there. I'm just surprised we haven't seen their best version yet. Or we don't see it tonight in sort of a dead, weird West Coast travel spot, but I think they're the better team, and you're getting a pretty cheap price at +2. I would hop in.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the Bison as well.
Get in there.
The other question comes from Jim, our colleague, Matt. I don't know if you've heard of him. Florida A&M.
Not familiar with his work, but what
Florida A&M Santa Clara, for some reason. I think that's probably the last game of the slate, or close to it. This spread is 18.5. I tell you what, my number leans towards the Rattlers, but I hate this travel.
Yep.
And I hate the fact that Joseph Vrankich is back in the lineup for Santa Clara. He was limited in his first game back. He's their best player. Probably starts playing more minutes, obviously, as the games go along here. I'm staying far away. Number-wise, it's probably lean on A&M, but absolutely zero strong.
Agree. I'm just not touching it because I think Vrankich in game 2 could really dominate. And as feisty as the MEAC and SWAC and Southland and low major by game dogs were early in the year, I think it's later in the non-conference season. I don't know if they have that same bite as usual. So yeah. I was tempted to take our Rattlers, Kai, but didn't do it.
Bite, Rattlers, snakes. Broncos, I think horses do actually bite. I've never owned a horse or been on a horse.
No, we had them in our backyard, but didn't actually own them. So.
You did.
Well, behind our backyard, it was like a separate ranch.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's it. Let's do a reminder for the folks out there, Matt, of our best bets before we sign off for our Saturday shows tomorrow. We'll see him again tomorrow. Matt, what was your best bet?
The secret lies with Charlotte +9. And one of the 4, 9.5 in the hook. Please grab that hook if you can at our fine sponsors at BetRivers. 9.5. Again, one of the 4 matchups today at the Hall of Fame Classic in Charlotte. It is in their backyard. Obviously, Wake's not traveling too far either, but I like the matchup, and more importantly, I like the price. I think it's way too expensive for Wake.
Jim's best bet was South Alabama, Tarleton State under 126.5. My best bet is Portland, the Pilots -2 against San Jose State. That's it, fellas. And I mean fellas, I mean fella. Matthew Cox. Appreciate the 2-man weave. You know what? Jim's in the chat. I can say fellas. Jim, thanks for joining the chat. Chat Mom, thanks for joining as well. We are back tomorrow, 10:15 Central Time,
Spinny Saturdays.
Eastern. That's right. Spinny Saturday. 100 games to talk about, even with the cancellations. Stay strong, guys. 95% of the games are still on schedule. Think about the positives. Thanks, BetRivers, our presenters. Thank you, Field of 68 Best Bets. Please subscribe and like the channel.